We are learning about checks and balances for the three branches of government. We already learned about the checks that the president in the executive branch can have on the other two branches. These checks include having a veto if the legislative branch is trying to pass a law that the executive branch does not like. The president can veto. That's a check to make sure that that law doesn't happen. We also talked about how the executive branch can check the judicial branch because they're the ones who are in charge of appointing or picking who the judges are. So that's a check of the executive branch over the judicial branch. Now we're going to learn about checks and balances of the Congress over the other branches. The legislative branch of the government is Congress, made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. The main job of the legislative branch is to make laws for the country, decide on taxes, and decide how to spend the government's money. Here's an example of how the Constitution gives Congress checks and balances over the power of the president. You learned earlier that a president can veto, that is, reject or cancel, a bill Congress has passed. Well, after a president has vetoed a bill, the Congress can check the president by voting again. If 2/3 of the members of the House of Representatives and 2/3 of the senators vote again to pass a bill, then the bill goes into effect as law, even though the president tried to stop it with a veto. 2/3 of the Congress can override the president's veto. Override means to pass a bill in spite of the president's veto. That power of the legislative branch to override a veto checks the power of the executive branch veto. Here's another example of how the Constitution gives Congress checks and balance power over both the president and the Supreme Court. The House of Representatives has the power of impeachment over the president and the justices of the Supreme Court. Impeachment means to present formal charges against a public official, accusing that person of misconduct in office. The House of Representatives can impeach anyone who has broken the law, including the president and Supreme Court justices. After an official has been accused by the House of Representatives, the official has the right to a trial on those impeachment charges. The other part of Congress, the Senate, has the power to conduct the impeachment trial. Impeachment is a checking power because it stops the president or other high official from ignoring the laws of the country. Here's another example of how the Constitution gives Congress a balance on the powers of the president. There's a saying that Congress has the power of the purse strings, which means that Congress must approve plans for how the government's money can be spent. Congress decides how much money the president can spend to carry out laws. The president cannot do things for which Congress will not give him the money. The power of Congress to refuse to vote money can check the president's power to do things. Another example of how the powers of Congress can balance the powers of the president has to do with appointing judges to the federal court, including the justices of the Supreme Court. The president has the power to appoint judges for the federal courts. The person the president appoints must be approved by 2/3 of the Senate. The president's power is balanced by his need to get approval from the senators. Summary. Let's take a look at the checks that the legislative branch has. They can override a veto, confirm judge appointments, and impeach officials in the executive branch. They can propose constitutional changes and impeach officials of the judicial branch. Next time we'll talk about checks and balances that the Supreme Court has over the legislative branch and the executive branch.